My spouse remarked, "The kid is yours. Stop inquiring." I replied, "I trust you fully." Then, I quietly obtained a DNA test and sent copies to her whole family. Now they're bombarding my phone, pleading to discuss it. At 35, I'm here contemplating how I overlooked all the clues. My wife Rachel is 31, and we've been married for 4 years. She gave birth to our daughter Emma 5 months ago. Except Emma might not actually be ours. Let me rewind a bit. Rachel and I had been trying to conceive for about a year when she finally got pregnant. I was ecstatic. We both were, or so I believed. Everything appeared normal during the pregnancy. Regular doctor visits, shopping for baby items, preparing the nursery. But reflecting back now, there were signs that didn't quite fit. Rachel had always been outgoing, but during her pregnancy, she became secretive about her phone, taking calls in other rooms and quickly shutting apps when I approached. She claimed it was just forums about pregnancy and baby planning. She also started staying late for work more frequently. Her HR job didn't usually require extra hours, but suddenly she had evening meetings and weekend training sessions. She always had reasonable excuses when I inquired. The biggest warning sign should have been her reaction when Emma was born. I anticipated tears of joy, that heartfelt moment you see in movies. Instead, Rachel seemed almost anxious, glancing at me as if she was waiting for something. Emma was born with features that seemed a bit unusual. Not drastically different, but both Rachel and I have lighter skin tones, and Emma's complexion was noticeably darker. When I brought it up with Rachel, she became defensive, telling me that babies often change significantly in their first year, which is true, but there were also timing discrepancies. Rachel claimed her last period was in early March, which would place conception around mid-March. Yet, Emma was born in early November, supposedly at 36 weeks. The timeline didn't quite add up unless conception occurred earlier than Rachel stated. When I confronted her about it, she snapped, "The baby's yours. Stop asking questions." That phrase lingered in my mind. Who says that to their husband about their own child? I told her I completely believed her and dropped the topic. But privately, I began to observe more closely. Over the following months, Emma's features became more distinct. Her skin tone remained darker than either of ours, and she began to develop facial traits that didn't resemble Rachel or me. More troubling were Rachel's ongoing phone habits, still secretive, still taking calls away from sight. One evening, I overheard her speaking softly in the kitchen, catching snippets like, "He doesn't suspect anything," and "We have to be more cautious." When she returned to the living room, I asked who she was talking to. She claimed it was her sister discussing baby matters. But her sister lives in Arizona, and it was past midnight there. 2 weeks ago, something occurred that made everything clear. Rachel left her phone on the coffee table while she showered. It buzzed with a text, and the preview appeared on the lock screen. The message was from someone named Marcus. "Miss you and our little girl. Can't wait to see you both again. Our little girl." I didn't touch her phone, but that message etched itself into my mind. Rachel had mentioned planning to visit her mom this weekend with Emma, suggesting I stay home to catch up on work since I'd been putting in extra hours. That night, I made a decision. I needed to uncover the truth. As Emma's legal father through marriage, I could authorize medical testing. I scheduled a routine pediatric checkup for Emma and requested paternity testing as part of standard blood work, telling the pediatrician I had concerns about genetic health issues and wanted to confirm biological relationships for medical records. The doctor was understanding. Such requests aren't uncommon. Apparently, results would take 3 to 4 weeks. In the meantime, I started to scrutinize Rachel's schedule more closely. The weekend visit to her mom turned into visits every few weeks. Always just her and Emma. Always when I was supposedly too busy to join. I noticed patterns. Rachel would receive texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in months. She would vanish for hours on Saturday afternoons, claiming to be running errands, only to return in a good mood with very few actual purchases. For weeks later, the DNA results arrived, 0% probability of paternity. I stared at that paper for what felt like an hour. Everything clicked into place. The secretive behavior, the defensive reactions, the timing issues, the weekend visits. Emma wasn't my daughter. Rachel had cheated and gotten pregnant by someone else. But instead of confronting Rachel right away, I chose to do something else first. I retrieved Rachel's address book from her desk drawer and made multiple copies of the DNA test results. Then I prepared mailings to her immediate family, her parents, her 2 sisters, and her brother. I had met them all several times and had their addresses from Christmas cards and wedding invitations over the years. I wrote a simple cover letter. I thought you should know the truth about Emma's paternity. The DNA test results are attached. Rachel has been deceiving everyone, including me. I'm filing for divorce and will not be taking financial responsibility for another man's child. I mailed everything out on a Thursday using regular mail. Most people would receive it on Saturday. Then I waited. Saturday afternoon, my phone began to ring. First Rachel's mom, then her sister, then her dad. I didn't answer any of them. Rachel was at her mom's house for another weekend visit. Around 6 p.m., she called me in a panic. What did you do? My family is calling me asking about DNA tests. What is going on? I told her calmly that I had simply shared important medical information with people who deserved to know the truth. You had no right to involve my family in our private matters. Private matters? Rachel, you've been lying to me and everyone else for months. Emma isn't my daughter. Your family has been celebrating a grandchild who isn't related to me. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. You don't need to ruin everything over this. I'm not ruining anything, Rachel. I'm just not living a lie anymore. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, her mom called. I answered this time. Rachel's mom was upset, asking me not to make any hasty decisions. She said families go through rough times and this could be resolved. She asked me to think about Emma, who was innocent in all this. I agreed, stating that Emma was indeed innocent, which is precisely why I wasn't going to pretend to be her father only to leave later when the truth eventually surfaced. But what about Rachel? She made a mistake, but she loves you. She loves the security I provide. There's a difference. On Sunday, the calls continued from other family members. Rachel's dad demanded explanations. Her sister tried to mediate, while her brother actually supported my decision, saying he'd suspected something about the timing was off. Rachel returned home Sunday night without Emma. She had left her at her mother's house. We spoke for hours. Rachel finally confessed to the affair with Marcus, a guy she had met at a work conference about 18 months ago. She claimed she had tried to end it multiple times, but he kept pursuing her. She insisted she planned to cut ties with him permanently after Emma was born and focus on our marriage. She said she was going to tell Marcus that Emma was mine and sever all contact. How long were you planning to deceive me about this? I hoped maybe you'd never need to know. Emma could have resembled either of us as she got older. You were going to let me raise another man's child for 18 years? I thought it would be better for everyone. You wanted a baby. Emma needed a stable father figure. Marcus isn't ready for that kind of responsibility. So you chose to deceive me into providing what Marcus couldn't. She didn't have a good answer for that. On Monday morning, I consulted a divorce attorney. By Tuesday, I filed the papers. Since Emma wasn't biologically mine, and I had DNA proof, I wouldn't be responsible for child support. Rachel would have to establish paternity with Marcus for financial support. On Wednesday, Rachel's workplace situation became complicated. A colleague had heard about our separation and inquired if it was related to the rumored paternity issues. Rachel had to meet with her supervisor to address the gossip affecting her work environment. By Thursday, news was spreading in our social circle. Rachel's family members had shared details with close friends. In a community where many people know each other, information travels fast. On Friday, Marcus contacted me through Facebook Messenger. He said Rachel informed him about the DNA test and wanted to discuss Emma's future. He asked if we could meet to work out some kind of arrangement. I replied that I had no relationship with Emma and wouldn't be involved in any arrangements. He was Emma's father, and Rachel was Emma's mother. They could sort out their situation. Marcus argued that Emma had been living with me for 5 months and sudden changes would be traumatic for her. I pointed out that Emma was only 5 months old and wouldn't remember any of this. The longer the deception continued, the more traumatic it would become. Rachel spent the weekend trying to manage the fallout with her family and figure out next steps with Marcus. Update 1. 6 weeks later. 6 weeks since I mailed those DNA results, and the consequences continue to unfold. Rachel's affair has led to complications she clearly hadn't foreseen. The family situation remained tense. Rachel's parents were divided on how to proceed. Her mother wanted to support Rachel through the crisis, while her father was furious about being deceived and embarrassed that he had been boasting about his granddaughter to friends and co-workers. Rachel's sisters took different stances. One blamed me for not being forgiving and working harder to save the marriage, while the other felt Rachel brought this upon herself and needed to face the truth. The social fallout affected Rachel more than expected. Several mutual friends felt deceived and angry. They had given baby gifts, attended the baby shower, and celebrated Emma's birth, all while Rachel was actively lying about Emma's paternity. Some of our couple friends felt uncomfortable maintaining relationships with both of us separately, having to choose sides for social gatherings, which created awkward dynamics. Rachel's work environment became strained. While her personal life didn't directly impact her job performance, the ongoing drama and family phone calls during work hours were disruptive. Her supervisor suggested she take some personal time to resolve her situation. Marcus's involvement proved complicated. When the affair was hidden, he was excited about having a relationship with Rachel and seeing Emma occasionally. But when he became legally responsible as Emma's biological father, his enthusiasm waned. Marcus lived in an apartment with a roommate and had limited experience with babies. His lifestyle wasn't set up for regular childcare responsibilities. He agreed to informal financial support, but hesitated when Rachel mentioned formal child support arrangements. Rachel discovered that Marcus, as a secret boyfriend, was very different from Marcus as a co-parent and financial provider. He had been charming and attentive when their relationship was an escape from reality, but actual parental responsibilities weren't nearly as thrilling. 3 weeks ago, Rachel attempted to negotiate a reconciliation. She suggested we could work through the trust issues, and I could still be involved in Emma's life as a stepfather figure. I clarified that I wasn't interested in raising another man's child, especially when the mother had lied about paternity from conception through birth and beyond. But you cared about Emma before you knew the truth. Those feelings don't just vanish. Those feelings were based on lies, Rachel. Every moment of attachment I felt was built on the deception you created intentionally. What about Emma's well-being? She needs stability. Emma's well-being is Marcus's responsibility now. He's her father. Rachel argued that Marcus wasn't dependable enough to provide the stability Emma needed. I pointed out that this was Rachel's issue to resolve. She chose Marcus as Emma's father when she decided to have an affair with him. 2 weeks ago, the divorce proceedings advanced. My attorney filed for legal disestablishment of paternity along with the divorce paperwork. The DNA test results supported removing my name from Emma's birth certificate and eliminating any ongoing parental obligations. Rachel's attorney tried to argue for spousal support based on the length of our marriage. My attorney countered that the marriage had been based on fraud and deception, particularly regarding the pregnancy that prompted many of our financial decisions. The court scheduled hearings for next month. Rachel would need to establish formal paternity with Marcus and arrange child support through the state system. Rachel's financial situation became precarious. She had planned to take extended maternity leave, relying on my income. Now she faced single motherhood on her HR salary with uncertain support from Marcus. She had to find childcare for Emma and returned to work full-time earlier than expected. Her mother helped temporarily, but made it clear this wasn't a permanent arrangement. Last week, Rachel sent me a lengthy email apologizing for everything and asking if there was any way to salvage our relationship. She claimed the affair was the biggest mistake of her life, and she'd do anything to make things right. My response was brief. The mistake wasn't the affair, Rachel. The mistake was lying about Emma's paternity and trying to trick me into raising another man's child. That's not something you can simply apologize away. She replied, asking what happened to forgiveness and second chances. I explained that some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. Lying about a child's paternity falls into that category. By Friday, Marcus had to acknowledge paternity officially and establish a support arrangement. The amount was based on his income and existing obligations, which left Rachel with less financial help than she'd hoped for. Rachel's new reality was becoming apparent. Single motherhood, reduced income, an unreliable co-parent, and social isolation from the deception she maintained for months. Meanwhile, my life was becoming simpler and more peaceful. No more wondering about mysterious phone calls or unexplained schedule changes. No more analyzing whether I was being told the truth about basic facts. The divorce would finalize in a few more weeks, allowing me to move forward completely without any ties to Rachel's choices or their repercussions. Update 2. For months later. For months since those DNA results were sent, and the full extent of the consequences has become evident. Rachel's situation continues to deteriorate while Marcus proves to be exactly as unreliable as expected. The co-parenting arrangement with Marcus became a disaster. His initial eagerness to be involved in Emma's life dimmed quickly when faced with actual parental responsibilities. His visits became irregular, and his financial contributions were frequently late. Rachel tried to enforce the formal support agreement, but Marcus argued that his income was erratic and he couldn't guarantee regular payments. The state child support system proved slow and bureaucratic in dealing with non-compliant fathers. Marcus also began bringing complications from his own life into the situation. He had a complicated relationship history, and his ex-girlfriend wasn't pleased about his new baby with a married woman. This created drama that affected his availability and willingness to be involved with Emma. Rachel realized that dating as a single mother with a child from an affair was significantly more challenging than she had anticipated. Most potential partners weren't interested in immediately taking on a complicated situation involving deception and an unreliable biological father. Her social circle remained limited, as the initial scandal had created permanent divisions among mutual friends. Some people forgave her, while others didn't, but everyone remembered the deception. Rachel's family dynamics stabilized somewhat, but remained strained. Her parents provided minimal support, but made it clear they disapproved of the choices that led to this situation. Holiday gatherings felt awkward, and conversations avoided topics related to Emma's paternity. Financial pressures intensified over time. Emma's expenses increased while Marcus's support remained inconsistent. Rachel had to downsize to a smaller apartment and took on additional freelance work to make ends meet. Her career advancement stalled. The personal drama and time conflicts from single parenting affected her work performance. She remained employed, but was passed over for promotions and excluded from high-profile projects. 2 months ago, Rachel made one final attempt to reach out to me. She sent a message through a mutual friend asking if I'd consider meeting to discuss Emma's future. The mutual friend relayed that Rachel was struggling with depression and isolation. Single motherhood was much tougher than she had expected, and Marcus's involvement continued to decline. I declined the meeting request, explaining that Emma's future was Rachel and Marcus's responsibility to determine. I had no role in their situation and no interest in being drawn back into their problems. The friend suggested that Emma was innocent and deserved consideration regardless of how she was conceived. I agreed. Emma was innocent, which is exactly why she deserved her real father to take responsibility rather than being raised by someone who had been deceived about her parentage. Last month, the divorce was finalized. All legal connections between Rachel and me were severed. The paternity disestablishment was approved, and my name was removed from Emma's birth certificate. Marcus was officially recognized as Emma's legal father with formal support obligations. However, his actual compliance with those obligations remained inconsistent. 3 weeks ago, I ran into Rachel at a local store. She was struggling with Emma, who was crying while Rachel tried to manage groceries and baby supplies. She looked worn out and overwhelmed. She saw me and quickly looked away, likely not wanting to confront another reminder of what her choices had cost her. I felt no sympathy watching her struggle. Rachel had created this situation through deliberate deception and manipulation. The challenges she faced were natural consequences of her own decisions. My life had progressed positively. The house was peaceful, my finances were stable, and I was exploring new relationships without the burden of wondering whether I was being lied to about fundamental aspects of my partner's life. I started dating someone recently who values honesty and has no complicated history involving deception or affairs. The contrast with Rachel's secretive behavior was refreshing. Final update, 8 months later. 8 months since I sent those DNA results, and this story has reached its conclusion. Everyone has settled into the reality their choices created. Rachel's situation never improved significantly. Marcus's involvement with Emma remained minimal, and his support contributions continued to be unreliable. She adapted to single motherhood, but the isolation and financial strain became permanent features of her new life. Her attempts to rebuild her social circle were only partially successful. The deception created a reputation that followed her in community settings. People remembered the paternity fraud, even if they didn't actively shun her. Rachel's family provided basic support, but relationships remained distant. The embarrassment and anger from being deceived never fully disappeared. Family gatherings were cordial but lacked warmth. Her career stabilized at a lower level than before. She remained employed, but advancement opportunities dwindled. The time demands of single parenting and previous workplace disruptions had lasting effects. 6 months ago, Rachel's friend reached out one last time, asking if I'd contribute to Emma's future expenses like education or medical needs. The friend emphasized that Emma was innocent and deserved support regardless of paternity issues. My response was clear. Emma's needs were her biological father's responsibility. Marcus had incurred financial obligations when he chose to have an affair with a married woman. Those obligations belonged to him, not to the man he had helped deceive. Rachel apparently accepted that I wouldn't be involved in Emma's life in any capacity. The friend reported that Rachel was focusing on building stability with the resources available to her and Marcus. Marcus's pattern of unreliability persisted, but Rachel adjusted her expectations accordingly. She stopped depending on his consistency and built her life around what she could control. Last month, I heard through social media that Rachel had started dating someone new, a single father who understood the challenges of blended families. Whether that relationship would develop into something stable remained uncertain. Emma was now over a year old and developing normally despite the complicated circumstances of her parentage. My life had completely moved forward. I was in a serious relationship with someone who valued honesty and had no history of deception. We were discussing marriage and potentially starting a family based on truth rather than lies. The contrast between my current relationship and my marriage to Rachel was striking. No secret phone calls, no mysterious schedule changes, no wondering whether I was being told the truth about basic facts. I learned to trust my instincts when something felt off, rather than accepting convenient explanations. I also learned that some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive or overlook. The DNA test results didn't ruin Rachel's life. Her choices did. The results simply prevented me from being manipulated into supporting those choices indefinitely. Rachel wanted to maintain the security of our marriage while pursuing the thrill of her affair. She wanted to raise her affair baby with my financial support while keeping Marcus available for emotional fulfillment. Reality doesn't work that way. Choices have consequences, and deception eventually comes to light. Marcus wanted the excitement of an affair without the responsibilities of being a committed father. He got exactly what he chose: a baby he sees sporadically and financial obligations that strain his lifestyle. I sought honesty and commitment in my marriage. When I discovered those were absent, I chose truth over comfortable lies. The mailed DNA results weren't revenge, they were sharing information. Rachel's family deserved to know they had been celebrating and supporting a child based on lies about her parentage. Everyone deserved to know the truth about what Rachel was capable of and what she had actually done. That's not vindictive, it's just honest. Rachel and Marcus thought they could maintain their deception indefinitely. They thought I would never question Emma's paternity or investigate suspicious circumstances. They were mistaken. The truth emerged and everyone had to face reality. Rachel learned that affair partners don't automatically become reliable life partners, and that pregnancy doesn't guarantee commitment from men who have already proven unfaithful. Marcus learned that having children is easier than providing consistent care for them, and that exciting affairs become mundane obligations when faced with real parental responsibilities. Emma will grow up understanding that choices have consequences and that honesty matters in relationships. I learned that protecting oneself from deception isn't cruel or vindictive. It's necessary and appropriate. Sometimes the truth is the most powerful response available. Rachel and Marcus gambled on my ignorance and acceptance of lies. They lost that bet entirely. Everyone received exactly what their actions earned.